Hello and welcome to the MMA Live Chat Show. I'm Rich Davie and it's Thursday, April 10th, 2014. There's all sorts of interesting MMA news going on, and today we're going to cover a little bit of that news. On today's show, we'll discuss a few matchups that have been announced recently, and a couple of those due to changes made on the UFC 173 card. We're also going to talk about the UFC 175 Cormier versus Hendo matchup and the title implications from that one. And in the final thoughts segment, we'll speak about the Nate Diaz situation where he's looking to get out of his UFC contract, the amount of money that Holly Holm was offered for a boxing contract versus the amount of money she was offered for the UFC contract. And then we'll wrap it up with Jake Shields getting cut from the UFC. On today's show, we have yours truly and Damon Gazelle. Thanks for taking part in another show, buddy. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and joining me to discuss some MMA news that's happening. Go ahead and say hello to anybody that might be listening, buddy.
How's it going, Rich? How's it going, everybody that's listening?
Okay, bro. I appreciate you showing up here, man. Let's see. The next couple of UFC events are on Fight Pass, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a pass on our predictions this time around. At the end of the first quarter of predictions, we've got David in the lead with Damon, Rich, and then Wes. All right, let's talk about UFC 173, which is taking place on pay-per-view on May 24th in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. And this card had some changes on it due to some injuries. It seems to be a never-ending scheme of changing scenarios with the situation once it started. I guess what we'll be seeing on this card, though, is we'll be seeing Barao versus TJ Dillashaw for the bantamweight title, and that will be the main event. And we'll also see Jake Ellenberger versus Robbie Lawler, and that's also going to be on the pay-per-view card as well. So first up, Damon Barao versus TJ Dillashaw, the champ versus the number 5 ranked bantamweight fighters. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, I think the UFC was just trying to save 173 with that. I like TJ Dillashaw. He's a great fighter, but he's not ready for Renan Barao. I watched Scott Jorgensen on Twitch, and he said himself that the toughest opponent he's ever faced has been Renan Barao, and he's fought some well-known guys.
Who was it that got hurt initially? I don't recall.
Well, it was Weidman is out because he had to have surgery on both knees, minor surgery, but he got pushed back to UFC 175 on the July 4th weekend against Machida. That was supposed to be the headline event for 173.
Right, but wasn't there somebody that was supposed to fight Barao and got injured as well?
No, Barao wasn't scheduled for that.
Well, how did TJ Dillashaw step into the picture? That was just a match made from the get-go?
Yeah, it was just they were looking to fill a spot, and Barao, he's ready to go after beating Faber, because they weren't going to do two title matches on UFC 173.
Well, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, props to Dillashaw for getting the chance, but I don't think he's ready. And if he does win, that's going to be one hell of an upset.
Yeah, that's pretty much the general consensus on things there. I don't think very many people think that Dillashaw really has much of a shot. And, I thought the reason that he was fast-tracked on this fight here was because some other fighter had an injury and he stepped in for him. But I don't think that many people think that this one goes any other way than a Barao victory. So, I don't know, man. How do you call this one ending here?
Barao by murder. Sanctioned, of course.
what method and what round?
I already told you. I don't know. Second round, maybe first. I mean, look at what Barao did to Faber in the first. Come on. I mean, he had him knocked down 3 times in the first. I would like to see Dillashaw do well, but man, if Barao did that to Faber in the first round, I I'm hoping Dillashaw can make it out of the first round. Um, but you never know. Like you say, it's MMA. Dillashaw may be able to use his wrestling and actually make a fight of it.
All right, so now you're getting wishy-washy on me here.
Yeah, I'm waiting until the actual prediction show to make the prediction.
Yeah, well, at this point in time here, I'm thinking it Edinburgh out by 7-2. So I don't know. Let's move on to the next one there. Jake Ellenberger versus Robbie Lawler, the number 5 UFC rank versus the number 1 UFC rank. Is this one a definite go?
Yeah, as far as I know, this one was added to UFC 173 as well. Um, I'm not sure who was pushed back, but for some reason they threw this one on the UFC 173 card as well, and man, I'm excited to see it. You know, it's um oh God, sorry, sorry for the pause. You're gonna have to edit that. You know, I mean it stacks the card like crazy because you got the title shot and then you got Lawler, who everybody, you know, well, a lot of people think that he possibly could have won uh, the welterweight championship against Ellenberger, who Ellenberger is a tough opponent. You know, I could see Ellenberger actually taking this fight.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at that too, man. I'm looking at number 5 versus number 1, but I'm seeing a lot of people thinking that Ellenberger can, in fact, win this one. Jake Ellenberger's 8-2 in his last 10, and he doesn't have 2 losses in a row on his professional fight record. So he's coming off a loss, so he doesn't have 2 in a row ever.
Yeah,
We'll see if the omen holds true. But I don't know, man. Other than the rankings and the reach, most of the stats favor Ellenberger, and I don't know, man. Flip of a coin for me. I mean, I really want to see Robbie Lawler win, so he gets a shot again.
yeah.
But I don't know, man. What do you think, man? Who do you think wins it?
I'm actually gonna go with Ellenberger. I like Ellenberger. He's a great fighter. I think he's underrated by a lot of people. You know, he did just lose to Rory McDonald via decision, but I mean he's taken out some good opponents. He had a round one KO of
Yeah, but we're talking Robbie Lawler here.
yeah, but Robbie Lawler isn't always the safest fighter. Robbie Lawler, you know, he's one of those guys that he doesn't always string together the best record himself. You know,
And so you're picking Ellenberger to win by how?
Decision.
Yeah, I'm going to go the same way. I think Ellenberger wins that one too. I love Robbie Lawler, but I mean everything that I looked at and read on this, man, everyone's picking Ellenberger to win by decision.
Yeah, he's just his wrestling and everything. He he's one of those guys that he's got skills everywhere.
All right, let's move on to the next one here. This is UFC 175, taking place July 5th, 2014 at the Mandalay Bay Event Center, and that's going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada. This one here isn't solidified as yet because I was watching UFC Tonight last night, and we're talking about Daniel Cormier versus Dan Henderson, the number 5 ranked versus the number 6 UFC ranked light heavyweight fighters. And it's kind of odd. How do those rankings even make sense? But what's even odder is they're pushing this as a fight that's happening, and we're finding out today that it's not even really solidified, according to what they were saying last night on UFC Tonight. So I don't know, man. What do you think about this one?
You know, I I think it's playing into that John Jones thing, saying uh, put him up against somebody that's known before he gets a title shot, and Hendo, Hendo does have a name, and Hendo is one of those guys that can definitely end a fight with one punch, as we just witnessed against Shogun.
Yeah, but it's funny how Cormier gets bumped up to number 5 spot, and Henderson is still at number 6, and he actually beat somebody in the top 10.
Yeah, but I see it though because of Cormier fighting at heavyweight and dropping down. If he's able to win fights against guys bigger than him, I'm pretty sure they think that he's able to win fights against guys that
Well,
are
yeah, I'm sure you follow
his.
my point, though. I mean, because a guy ranked 139, and nobody, Cormier wasn't even ranked last time when he fought
Yeah,
the fella.
yeah, and he fought a guy that was ranked so low or
Yeah,
not even ranked.
139 he was ranked, and now he's number 5. So that just seems kind of odd.
But the way they rank them in the UFC rankings is the media ranks them. So
Yeah.
I mean that's where they get that from. But my main thing about this is that it's uh the winner gets a title shot against
Well,
the
that's a lot of
the winner.
hypothetical, isn't it?
Yeah, against the winner of Jones versus
It's a
Teixeira.
hypothetical fight happening for a hypothetical shot at a hypothetical title at John Jones, if he even has it.
Exactly. If Teixeira wins,
Yeah,
Teixeira's going to go up against Gus
you know.
because Gus gets the next title shot, and then whoever wins out of that fight, the winner of this fight will get. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of funny
it's
the way that they're
completely
promoting it. I guess
ridiculous.
exactly. Yeah, I thought so
It
too.
makes absolutely no fucking sense, and why this was even made like that is.
Oh, and now they're saying this isn't even really solid. It may not even be happening. So
Well, maybe they've been listening to the fans saying, "What the fuck are you thinking?"
yeah.
Going with getting a title shot lined up two fights down the road.
Yeah, I mean that's just crazy talk, but they do some crazy things over there at the UFC.
I, I love the UFC, but man, I really you when you want to talk about legitimacy, they lean towards not being so much on that end.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
When I was looking at this, and I'm looking Daniel Cormier versus Dan Henderson. Wow, man, that sounds interesting. And then the winner of that will get a shot at the winner of Jones Gustafson, and they're pretty much predicting that Jones is already going to beat Glover Teixeira. So it's like,
yeah.
wow, it's like, come on, man, like, let's break this down one step at a time, people. But I don't know, man. How would you see this one going if it did in fact happen?
Oh, Cormier, uh, easily. I don't think Hendo has the stamina anymore, and he's going to be coming off of a training camp without TRT to
Yeah,
help
you think he
motivate
just
him.
smothers them all the way until the final rounds? I mean,
Well, they're both Olympic wrestlers. And Cormier, uh, he doesn't have the striking. I don't think Henderson has, but he does have good striking. But
yeah,
you know,
he's also much younger, isn't he?
yeah, he's much younger. And look at what he did to Frank Mir. He pretty much held him up against the cage the
Exactly. Well,
entire
that's
fight.
what I'm envisioning for this fight. He's going to tire him out, and then he'll try to get on him in the ground and ground and pound and get a TKO.
But
So
you never know.
I'm going with Cormier by TKO in 3.
Yeah, I don't know about TKO. I'm going with a decision. Um, Hendo really, except for Belfort knocking him out, he hasn't really lost too many that way. um, it, I just don't think Henderson is going to have the stamina to keep up. I think Cormier is going to bring it to him
Yeah.
the entire time, and Hendo's just not going to be able
Yeah, that
to keep
last fight
up.
wasn't real exciting either. I mean, they were both pretty tired, from the second round on. So, yeah, I don't imagine him looking much better in this one, especially now that he doesn't have TRT, whereas we found out in that last fight with Shogun, he did have the TRT. So things probably aren't looking very good for him in this one.
Yeah, best of luck to him. I mean, he's got a puncher's chance, like everybody says. It is Hendo. Anything can happen, but
You know. All right, let's do that final thoughts segment real briefly, and we'll touch on all these topics here that we were mentioning earlier. Nate Diaz is looking to get out of his UFC contract. He's complaining that he's broke and he's not getting paid the right amount of money.
It's Diaz trying to get more money. Of course, he went on a big tirade, and it's. But when you look at it, Diaz does bring in both Diaz brothers. They both bring in. They put butts in seats. They sell pay-per-views. He makes, I think, 60,000 a show, 60,000 a win. I do believe he is worth at least 100,000 a show, 100,000 a win. I think.
His record isn't all that good in the UFC, though, is it?
No, but if you look at record, if you go that route.
Well, I mean, isn't the amount of money you make commensurate with their performance? I mean, the better you do, the more you make.
Not necessarily.
Well, it should be.
Otherwise, fighters that do have good records would be making a lot more money than they do.
You know,
Whereas it's the draws that make the money.
well, that's the whole point. I mean, a lot of guys, they work their way up, and then eventually, because they have such good records, they get that recognition, like we're seeing with, Chris Weidman now. And he's making the big money now, so I guess you just got to hang on for however many fights. I mean, it didn't take Chris Weidman all that long, what, 6, 7 fights or something like that?
Yeah, but he's also on the UFC hype train. Sonen's making good money now, and it's because he's a draw.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that Diaz signed a contract back a couple fights ago, and now he's wanting to either be released from the UFC or to get paid a certain amount of money to fight.
My feeling on that, and you know this because we spoke about it before the show, man, it's too bad. You signed a contract, you made a deal, you got one fight left on your contract, and then go into renegotiations. If not, and you don't like it, then, you got elsewhere to go. You can go to Bellator or ONE FC or to the WSOF.
I think they've seen what Gilbert Melendez did, and they think that they're going to do the same type of thing,
Yeah, everyone's trying to pump the UFC now. But yeah, I think we all agree there that UFC doesn't really pay as much as they should. I mean, now, as I was saying to you before the show, they bought the UFC when it was a $2 million corporation, and now they've gone from a $2.1 billion corporation to a $3.5 billion corporation. So, they're making some money. There's no doubt about it, and they should probably take care of their fighters a little bit better. But they can't afford to take care of everybody and distribute all of the wealth. So, and that brings us to that Holly Holm story that we were going to talk about too. Holly Holm was recently offered $250,000 for a boxing contract, whereas the UFC offered her $15,000 for the contract. So.
Yeah, 15,000 to show, 15,000 to win, so it'd be 30,000.
Yeah, so obviously it's not only the story that we heard where DFW didn't care for the management. Obviously, he didn't care to pay her as much money as she probably should get.
Yeah, that's a hell of a low ball there. I mean,
she's a 135er, by the way, because we were asking that on the last show that we did. She's a 135er, so.
I kind of understand. I don't understand the amount, but I can understand why they don't want to pay $250,000 because she really doesn't have a name outside of her kickboxing or.
Well, Michelle Watterson was talking her up for a while, man. I interviewed Michelle Watterson on Mother's Day last year, and she was telling me about Holly Holm last year. She was telling me, look out for this girl. She's going into MMA. She's a boxer, but she's good and she's tough. And man, she's won every fight so far. So yeah. Michelle Watterson obviously has a good eye for that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that too. $15K versus $250. Pay the woman a little bit more. I don't know what the other ladies are making at this point in time, but that could be a factor in things as well.
Yeah, I don't think she has enough of a name, because it's to the UFC, it's all about putting butts in seats and selling pay-per-views. And
well, DFW knows who she is. He's a fan of hers.
He does. He does. But how many fans of the UFC?
Some information on her, and he went and watched her, and from what I thought I read, I thought he became a fan of hers just watching her from the side.
Yeah, I'm sure he is, but I mean, when you look at who knows her and will she sell pay-per-views and put butts in seats? I don't think so, because I don't think the average MMA fan even really knows who she is.
Well, yeah, not unless she goes in there and she pummels the shit out of Ronda Rousey in a
Yeah,
boxing
she
match.
would make a name then, and
Yeah.
then and maybe renegotiate
I see a lot
or
of people
negotiate
saying
a
that she
contract
can, in
then.
fact, do that. She could probably bust Rousey up pretty badly with her hands.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure she could, but you never know. I mean, it's one of those classic boxer versus MMA type deals where it's not just on the feet. If Ronda is smart enough to not try and stand with her and goes right away for the submission, it's possible that she could beat her.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but she just had a fight the other day, and unfortunately, she broke her forearm in that fight. She
Yeah,
broke her arm in the first round and kept fighting through, I think it was 5 rounds, wasn't it?
I I don't know if I'm almost sure it's 5 rounds because it is a title fight.
It was, wasn't it a title fight?
Yeah,
Yeah. But that's pretty tough, man. And
yeah,
I saw the X-ray. The bone was snapped in half. It wasn't just like a fracture; it was broken in half.
yeah. I mean, it'll take a while for that to heal.
Well, she's got some time to think about it now,
Yeah. I don't think there's much to actually think about. $250,000 compared to 30,000 if you win.
Well,
You'd have
you
to
know what
be
it's
able.
starting to look like, man? It's starting to look like the UFC is embracing this model where they're thinking that fighters are just going to want to fight on the biggest stage in MMA because it's the name of the UFC and the brand, and they probably don't have to pay them all that much unless it's the top 10 fighters. And that seems the trend that we're looking at lately in the UFC. And I guess that's their model, and you can't fault them for it. But I mean, is it really fair to the fighters to, be making the kind of money that we're seeing here? I mean, Holly Holm looking at, $250,000 versus 15 and 15. I mean,
Yeah, and when you look at it compared to every other professional sport, even in the NFL, the guys that just are in on a team to play scrimmages against the guys that are going to go out on the field, they make at least $80,000, close to 80,000, $60,000 to $80,000 a year just to scrimmage with these guys. You know,
yeah.
and that's a lot less dangerous than going out there and fighting like some of these guys do for $8,000 a match.
Yeah. Well, Holly and her camp, they haven't said anything about the money, have they? It was just the news that picked up on that, correct?
Yeah, I think it was the news that picked up on it, but I don't think she's really too much worried about doing anything right now, MMA
No, I
wise.
thought she had pretty much turned the corner and got into MMA, and she made the transition where she's now an MMA fighter. But hell, for $250,000, man, I'm sure she'd change her mind right quick.
Yeah, and that's just one fight, or
Yeah,
no, yeah, one fight.
yeah, one fight.
I mean, if you're Holly Holm, what do? You take the $250,000 fight, recover from that, and then start talking about MMA again.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I mean, I would think that if she's truly made the transition into MMA and she wants to make a name in MMA, while she can, take a shot in the 135 division, beat a couple of fighters, and then there's your shot at Ronda Rousey and make history. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it could be making history, but then again, making history is only one thing compared to a certain amount of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If she makes $250,000 for one fight,
yeah,
just one fight with this organization and wins,
yeah.
and boxing, you know,
That's legitimate too, but a lot of people also, want to have their name in the record books. I'm not saying Holly Holm is one of those people, but
well,
that's one of the motivations for people who get into sports and want to set, goals and everything like that, so they can be remembered in the annals of history. All right,
yeah,
let's
but
move on.
it's a, it's a
Let's move on to the last one here.
I just want to say it's a title fight for the boxing as well. So
Yeah, it is, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And how long is that boxing match?
Ham.
How long is the boxing match? How many rounds?
It doesn't say.
Oh,
But
12?
maybe with women's MMA or women's boxing, it could even be a 10 rounder. It doesn't say.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lost touch with boxing a while ago, but yeah, yeah, I would love to see her come over to the UFC. I mean, I have no problem with that at all. I don't think she should get a shot straight at Rousey right away. Neither should Cormier, and neither should Cyborg. But I'd love to see all those ladies in the UFC.
Oh, I would love it too, but fighter pay. You
Yeah.
know.
Right, let's move on to the next one here. I think this one probably has something to do with fighter pay as well. Jake Shields has been cut from the UFC. Very interesting, huh?
Yeah. Not surprising though. He's after you see what they did with Okami. Um, Okami was a top paid fighter, and
Fitch was
he
the one that
was
started the ball rolling in that way.
yeah, and he wasn't putting on exciting fights, and he got cut. And the UFC, they are a business first and foremost, and they have to look out for uh, paying guys what they don't feel they're worth.
Yeah, I read something about Okami the other day where he said he's going to make a point to prove that he's an exciting fighter. So I guess that got to him a little bit. He caught
Yeah,
it.
it was a quick fight, but they were paying Shields. I think it was 100, or was it 75,000 or 150,000 a fight, and then 150,000 to win. He was getting paid somewhere around there. He was getting
Oh, and he got totally worked in that last fight. Who did he fight last? Where he got totally
uh,
worked.
a Lombard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like Dana said, he's not seeing improvement in Shields' striking, and he's not really a fan favorite. A lot of people have bitched
Well, again,
about.
he's also from that era where the fighters weren't so well rounded, and they could pretty much rely on their dimension. If that one dimension was stronger than the other guy's one dimension.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't be one dimensional and really remain on top. I mean, there are some fighters in certain divisions, Ronda Rousey being one of them. She's pretty much a judo. She did stop Sarah McMahon with the one chop, but when she was getting tagged by her, she did grapple right away to stop from being hit.
Yeah.
Um, but she did finally get a win that wasn't via the armbar. Um, Shields, he's one of those guys. He's got talent, but he does not put butts in seats, and he does not sell pay-per-views. So he's not worth the money really for the UFC to keep him around.
Well, where do you think he's going? I'm saying he's going over to WSOF.
Uh, Possibly. The ONE FC, I believe it was, just signed Ben Askren. They might be looking to sign another big name fighter for him to fight against.
I'm kind of
Um,
liking the WSOF now. It's looking more and more like the WEC to me, and I used to love that organization.
yeah, I would love to see him go to the WSOF, but you have to look at it too. You got Bellator, WSOF, and ONE FC, and
Yeah,
they all
but when
they
you look
all
at
have a certain
look
amount
at
of money.
when you look at WSOF now, they're looking more and more like the WEC. It's got the guys from the UFC that are coming down and they were put into the WC for a little bit, and then the guys
Hmm.
coming up and moving into the UFC are coming from WSOF. So it's pretty much what the WEC was. I mean,
Yeah,
lots of UFC fighters, so maybe he would be comfortable going there and fighting with some of the UFC fighters. It's like I mentioned to you on the pre-show. Um, yeah, I guess other organizations are interesting, but I mean, wouldn't you rather want to be, if you were a fighter, fighting in an MMA organization with fighters who you know are talented, UFC caliber fighters, but because they're simply not exciting, they're put into another league or cut from the league that they're in. I mean, WSOF is on good ground here, in my opinion.
yeah, but how much more money do they have to keep buying the UFC? Uh, the people that the UFC cuts.
Well, it's so funny too, and it's interesting. They obviously do have a lot of money because Versus is the old WC network, the Versus network where WC was.
Yeah, but
So
you also got Bellator, who's got
yeah, but they're
Viacom.
yeah, but they're not as interesting in my opinion. They don't have the the big names that the WSOF has, and a lot
No,
of
I understand what you're talking, but what I'm talking about is who might pick them up. You know.
oh yeah, you have all those other options. I'm just saying, my preference is get the WEC back together, and then
No,
that'll be
oh,
a
I'd love to see him to go to the WSOF, but the thing is there's so many that's going to be offering him a contract, and as a fighter, you more than likely want to actually take the money and possibly maybe take a little bit less money if you think you can become the champ in that league and actually start making more money.
Okay, well,
You know.
my record's pretty good on this. I picked Okami to go to WSOF, and I picked Anthony Johnson to go to the UFC, so I'm pretty good at spotting these, fella.
Well,
All right,
hopefully.
so anything else more on Jake Shields before we wrap it up?
Uh, I just think it's funny how a lot of people used to complain about how boring of a fighter he was, and then as soon as the UFC released him, there was an uproar about them releasing him.
Releasing him because he was a boring fighter. I don't subscribe to that boring fighter thing. I mean, again, if you can't defend against somebody's wrestling capability where they just have you controlled, I mean, I don't like laying prey, but I mean, from what we saw in his last fight, he just did not look good, and I really don't see all that big stink of him getting cut from UFC for the kind of money that he was making. But I wish him luck over in wherever it is that he goes there. I'm pulling for him to go to WSOF. I know you think we'll one FC, but we'll see what happens.
No, I'm saying I would kind of hope to see ONE FC because of the Ben Askren going over there, wrestler against wrestler. But WSOF, you know, it would be awesome for him to go there, and you want to see somebody come up to help, or another organization come up to help start getting these fighters paid more.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to happen with all these available opportunities now. All right, buddy. Thanks again for joining me, Damon. I appreciate it. We'll do another MMA chat show probably next week. And as always, you're welcome to join me for that one. Time to say goodbye, buddy. So go ahead and say goodbye.
All right. See you later, Rich. See you later, anybody that watches the video.
All
Take it
right,
easy.
man.